When I left the city for the suburbs, I was chasing the usual dream. Peace, quiet, maybe a few barbecue weekends, and the kind of neighbors who wave but don't talk too much. I wanted green grass, blue skies, and silence broken only by birds, not sirens. Instead, I met Karen. Not just any Karen. No, this one was like a boss-level villain spawned directly from the HOA's dark dimension. Picture someone with the voice of a dial-up modem and the soul of a parking inspector, and you're halfway there. She didn't just love rules. She breathed them, invented them, weaponized them. She didn't need to be elected to the HOA board. She simply was the HOA, clipboard and all. But let me rewind. I had just finished unpacking the last box in my new home, modest, cozy, with a backyard big enough for a pool and dreams of never seeing another neighbor again. The first few weeks were deceptively calm. I landscaped. I installed the pool. I even waved back at the couple across the street without getting too emotionally attached. Then the letters started. Your mailbox is 1.3 inches higher than standard regulation. Grass should not exceed 2.5 inches. You are at 2.6. A decorative gnome must not be placed within 3 feet of the sidewalk. At first, I laughed. Surely this was a joke. A prank, even. Maybe some suburban hazing ritual. But no, it was signed Karen M., HOA Compliance Facilitator. I asked around. Everyone just smiled nervously, then looked away like I'd said Voldemort's name. Oh, Karen, they'd mumble. She's thorough. Translation, everyone was terrified of her. What they didn't tell me, what nobody told me, was that Karen had a thing for pools. Not just her pool, which was the suburban equivalent of an Olympic training facility, but everyone's pool. Yes, she had one. Yes, it was massive. Yes, it was filled with glowing lights and high-end chemical filters and a little statue of Poseidon that sprayed mist. But apparently, that wasn't enough. See, over time, I started noticing weird things. Wet footprints around my pool deck. Pool noodles slightly out of place. A beach towel I didn't own, draped casually over my chair. Once, I came home to find my sunscreen missing and replaced with one that had the word Karen written in Sharpie on it. Still, I wrote it off. Maybe wind. Maybe raccoons with really clean feet. I didn't want to be that guy who installs cameras just to find out a neighbor's dog likes his lawn chairs. But then it happened. I came home early one Thursday, left work a little ahead of schedule because, life, and I saw her. Karen, walking casually through the side gate of my yard, dripping wet, wrapped in one of my towels. Karen, I blinked. What are you doing in my yard? She gave a dismissive flick of her hand. Oh, just had a little dip. Hope you don't mind. Your pool has the best light after 4 p.m. So relaxing. She said this like she was discussing the weather. Like this was the most normal thing in the world. I stood there, waiting for the part where she apologized, or explained, or did anything human. Nothing came. Karen, this is private property. She smiled. A smile that was 2 parts smug and 1 part condescension. Relax, sweetie. We're neighbors. Sharing is part of the community spirit. I didn't know what to say. I mean, how do you respond to someone casually breaking into your pool like it's a public spa? I asked her, politely, not to do it again. She gave me a thumbs up. Not a yes, a thumbs up. I should have known better. 3 days later, Sunday afternoon, same story. My pool was used. My float was wet. My towel had faint whiffs of coconut oil and entitlement. I confronted her again. This time, more firmly. Karen, this isn't okay. I asked you not to come into my yard. She tilted her head like I was a particularly slow child. Are you seriously upset about this? It's just water. It's not like I'm taking anything. I pointed to the towel in her hand. My towel. Oh, please, she said and walked off. That was it. I had just witnessed the suburban version of a home invasion and been told I was overreacting. And the worst part? Everyone knew. She'd done this before. To other neighbors. And no one said anything. Because no one had the guts to go against Karen. But I'm not everyone. If Karen thought she could trample over boundaries, literal, legal, and chlorinated, she picked the wrong neighbor. I wasn't just going to slap her with a fence lock and a warning. No. I was going to get creative. And for the record, I have a friend in construction compliance. And he owed me a favor. After Karen's third unauthorized swim, complete with her usual towel theft and her signature, "What's the big deal?" attitude, I realized one thing. She wasn't going to stop. Karen treated property lines like mere suggestions. If you had a pool and she liked it more than hers, she'd use it. If you had a lawn chair that matched her beach tote, she'd sit in it. If you had boundaries, she'd ignore them. And the worst part? She truly believed it was her right. That she was somehow doing me a favor by gracing my pool with her chlorine-heavy aura. So I did what any rational person would do in my position. I plotted. Her weakness? Control. Karen had to be the one in charge of everything. Her image, the HOA, what color seasonal wreaths were appropriate. But her pool, oh, that was her shrine. The giant monument to her own suburban glory. It was her status symbol, her bragging right, her social currency. So, naturally, that's what I was going to target. Enter Mitch. Mitch is an old friend who works at a building compliance firm. His team inspects everything from faulty foundations to mold infestations to, yes, illegal chemical storage. I gave him a call, explained the situation, in professional terms, of course. Repeated unauthorized access to residential aquatic facility, compounded by linen misappropriation. Mitch laughed for about 30 seconds straight and then said, "Yeah, we can make that interesting." Step 1. A fake mold problem. I installed a few patches of realistic-looking growth behind my pool pump. The kind of thing that made your average inspector raise both eyebrows and grab a clipboard in terror. Step 2. Schedule an inspection. I had Mitch's team come out under the guise of checking structural moisture concerns around my pool foundation. And while they were at it, purely coincidentally, of course, they had a full view of Karen's pool setup from my backyard. Now, here's what you need to understand about Karen's pool. It wasn't just big, it was illegal in about 5 different ways. She'd had it installed without permits. It was placed too close to her property line. The foundation was poured sloppily. And those chemical barrels? Stored openly and unlabeled like she was prepping for the world's most aggressive science fair. Mitch's team, acting in full compliance with public safety protocol, just so happened to notice a few things. And just like that, the ball started rolling. A city inspector showed up 4 days later. Karen came outside like she was going to offer them lemonade, until she saw the logo on the van. Her smile froze. Her face twitched. I watched from my living room window as she tried to ask them if they were lost. They were not. The inspection lasted over an hour. They looked at everything. The slab, the chemicals, the ladder, the pool wall. One guy even tapped the concrete 3 times and frowned deeply. You never want a government inspector frowning and nodding at the same time. It's the kind of gesture that means, this is going to cost someone money, and it won't be me. By the time they left, Karen's expression could have curdled milk. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know how bad, until 2 days later, when a bright orange notice of violation appeared taped to her fence. Unsafe structure. Improper chemical storage. Faulty foundation. Pool must be removed within 14 days. Oh, and the fine? Astronomical. Apparently, when you mix illegal installation with hazardous waste and a Karen-level attitude toward regulations, the city responds with paperwork and a sledgehammer. She tried to fight it. Of course she did. She went on Nextdoor. She posted on the HOA Facebook group, "This is clearly harassment by an entitled new neighbor who doesn't understand our community values." I wanted to reply with a gif of her in my pool, but I restrained myself. Her appeal failed. Her pool was condemned. Over the next week, a team arrived to dismantle it. The sound of jackhammers was music to my ears. I washed with a cold drink and zero guilt as Poseidon got boxed up and her concrete kingdom crumbled. But the cherry on top? She couldn't afford the full fine and repairs, so she started renting out her Lexus. No joke. To newlyweds. For Instagram shoots. That thing she used to parade around like a mobile throne? Now reduced to a prop for people in bow ties and flower crowns. Every time it drove past, I could practically hear it weeping. And still, I wasn't done. Because while Karen might have lost her pool, she hadn't yet faced consequences for the actual crime. Trespassing. Stealing access to someone else's property, using their stuff, mocking them when they complained. So I filed a claim. You think The doorbell cam footage of her leaving my pool like she was exiting a private resort. Photos of the towels she borrowed. The dry cleaning bill for one that she left soaked in tanning oil. A statement of emotional distress. Yes, I worded it just formally enough to be annoying. She tried to laugh it off. Claimed I was escalating things unnecessarily. But when the summons arrived, she wasn't laughing. Court date. Set. HOA meeting. Incoming. And the judge? Oh, the judge had plans. I don't know if you've ever taken someone like Karen to court, but let me tell you, it's worth it for the look on their face alone. She showed up to small claims court in what I can only assume was her formal intimidation outfit. Massive sunglasses, crisp white blouse, clipboard tucked under her arm like a holy relic. She looked like she was about to rate the courtroom on Yelp. I had a folder with tabs, color-coded. I came prepared. So did my lawyer friend, not officially representing me, just there for moral support and to take notes for the inevitable Reddit post. The judge, a short man with a mustache that could double as a fencing weapon, called us up. Karen sauntered to the table like she owned the place. I calmly slid the folder forward. Exhibits A through G included. Video footage of Karen leaving my backyard, sopping wet. A timestamped screenshot from my doorbell cam. 3:41 p.m., Karen exiting my pool gate. A printed copy of a text from another neighbor saying, "She uses your pool too?" The dry cleaning bill for 2 towels. A small, laminated sign I had made that read, "Private property, not a community SBA." I didn't need to say much. The evidence spoke for itself. Karen tried to defend herself. Oh boy, did she try? Her argument was a mix of, "This is ridiculous. I thought it was allowed. He never made it clear I couldn't use it. And my personal favorite, he should be thanking me. I increased his property's social value." The judge blinked. Social value? Karen sat straighter. People saw me using it. That elevates the status of his property. It's branding, in a way. Even the clerk had to look away to hide a smile. The verdict? Karen was ordered to pay for the dry cleaning of my towels, pay a fine for trespassing, compensate me for unauthorized use of private property and emotional stress. But that wasn't all. The judge added, with a calmness that could only be described as devastating. As a gesture of accountability, I'm ordering Ms. M to issue a written apology to the plaintiff, to be read publicly at the next HOA meeting. This court believes it is important that she acknowledges the impact of her actions within the very community she claims to protect. Karen's jaw literally dropped. And then, almost too quietly to be heard, she muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." The judge, without skipping a beat, "No, Ms. M, I'm not." I almost felt bad. Almost. When the court adjourned, I walked out feeling lighter. Not victorious, just stable. Like a man who had finally been able to lock his pool gate without worrying about entitled feet leaving wet prints on his patio. But the real surprise? It wasn't the judgment. It wasn't the fine. It was what happened after. Because apparently, news spreads fast in our neighborhood. And once Karen was no longer seen as some HOA deity, people started sharing stories. Not just gossip, actual complaints. Formal ones. Turns out, Karen had been violating so many boundaries for so long, people had just stopped resisting. Like HOA Stockholm Syndrome. But now, they'd seen what one pushback could do. The HOA board, yes, the one we all assumed was Karen in disguise, held an emergency session. Apparently, there were enough formal, written complaints to warrant action. And boy, did they act. A memo went out that same week. It was short, sweet, and absolutely lethal. Effective immediately, Karen M has been relieved of all administrative responsibilities within the HOA. A review of her conduct has led to the decision to assign her a temporary role in community service to demonstrate restitution. And then came the last line. I read it 5 times just to make sure it was real. This includes weekly cleanup and maintenance of all shared community spaces, performed in clearly marked attire. Attire. I asked one of the board members what that meant. He smirked and said, "Oh, we've had vests printed." I waited. It says, "Trespassing does not equal ownership" across the back. Neon yellow. Very hard to miss. Karen hadn't even worn it yet. That was coming. But just the knowledge of what was about to happen had already shifted the atmosphere in the neighborhood. You could feel it. Something was coming. And this time, it wasn't Karen with a clipboard. The vest arrived on a Thursday. Neon yellow, industrial grade, reflective stripes you could probably see from space. Across the back, in block capital letters large enough to humble a dictator, it read, "Trespassing does not give you ownership." They handed it to Karen in front of the HOA clubhouse. Bob from the HOA, who had apparently come out of retirement specifically for this, didn't even try to hide the grin on his face. "Visibility matters," he said, handing it over like it was the Olympic torch of shame. Karen just stood there, stunned. Her sunglasses couldn't hide the twitch in her jaw. "You want me to wear this?" she asked, holding it like it might be contagious. Standard uniform for community service workers. HOA decision. Bob was absolutely savoring every word. The first assignment was the community dog park. Of course it was. Saturday morning, 8:30 a.m. sharp, Karen arrived in full passive-aggressive glory. The vest, oversized gloves, a trash picker she'd clearly bought from Amazon at 3 a.m. out of spite, and an expression like someone who'd been sentenced to dig graves for puppies. She had to clean up everything. Trash, fallen branches, the occasional biological contribution from the canine community. I watched from across the street with a coffee in one hand and a cinnamon roll from the sweet elderly couple next door. A thank you gift for standing up to that woman. Karen was knee-deep in mulch and indignation. Every now and then, people would walk by slowly. Some waved. A few nodded in approval. One guy took a photo from behind a newspaper. I wasn't saying anything, but the vest did all the talking. Week 2, the sidewalk cleanup. Karen showed up late and got a warning from the HOA for failing to arrive on time to fulfill assigned duties. She grumbled something about legal nonsense, and then spent 2 hours sweeping leaves off sidewalks while small children pointed at her and asked, "Mommy, why is that lady wearing a sign?" Week 3, the community trail. Let's just say the trail hadn't been maintained in a while, and the HOA made sure to assign her the most spiderwebbed, overgrown section imaginable. She emerged with a branch in her hair and a leaf stuck to her face, looking like a suburban who'd just lost a battle with nature. By week 4, Karen's posture had changed. She didn't strut. She shuffled. The sunglasses stayed, but now they looked less like a power move and more like camouflage. And the vest, once worn with dramatic eye rolls and visible resistance, now just hung on her. But the real turning point? The HOA meeting. It was packed. People who hadn't shown up in years came out, armed with lawn chairs and popcorn. Someone even set up a folding table with lemonade labeled Karenade. Proceeds going to the community garden. I couldn't make this up. Karen stepped up to the front. Slowly, she unfolded a single sheet of paper, cleared her throat, and began. "To my neighbors, I sincerely apologize for my actions over the past several months. I trespassed on private property. I overstepped my boundaries as a member of this community. I let my personal assumptions override respect for others' rights, and for that, I am truly sorry." It was the slowest, most monotone, most obviously forced speech in human history. But she read it, out loud, every word. When she finished, no one clapped. No one jeered. There was just silence, the heavy kind. The kind that comes after a thunderstorm when the air is charged with the memory of what just happened. Karen stepped down and walked directly into her next assignment, reorganizing the HOA's storage shed. I found out later the storage shed hadn't been touched since 1996 and probably housed at least one raccoon and a forgotten Christmas nativity set. Fitting. At this point, Karen was done. Not officially, not vocally, but you could see it. The battle she fought, clipboard in one hand, arrogance in the other, was over. And she'd lost. But there was still one more twist coming. Week 5 of Karen's public service saw her down on all fours, scrubbing graffiti off a bench that said, "Karen was here again." Whether it was real or sarcastically added by a neighborhood teen was unclear. Either way, the irony was perfect. She didn't even argue anymore. No calls to the HOA. No threats of lawsuits. No, this is harassment, speeches on the community bulletin board. The woman who once fined someone for using solar-powered garden lights that disrupted community aesthetic was now dodging actual bees in a neon vest. And then, just like that, it ended. She served her hours. Every one of them. Begrudgingly, silently, vest and all. But by the end, her house had become something of a ghost shell. The Lexus disappeared first. No more Saturday wedding photo shoots. The obnoxiously symmetrical hedge was left untrimmed. The Poseidon lawn ornament? Gone. Just a dirt patch where it used to be. And then came the sign. For sale. Karen didn't do garage sales. She didn't do goodbyes. No last HOA tantrum. No final clipboard mic drop. She just vanished. Rumor was, she sold at a loss. Something about negative community perception tanking her property value. Something else about a local real estate agent warning her, you might want to leave out the pool trespassing incident on the disclosure form. When the moving truck pulled away, no one waved. No one threw her a goodbye party. Not even a sarcastic one. But the next day, that was something else. I opened my front door to find a small gift basket on the steps. Local honey, homemade cookies, and a note. Thank you for standing up. Signed, the Cul-de-sac Survivors Club. Later that afternoon, more neighbors showed up. Some I never talked to. Some I didn't even know lived here. One brought a pie. One brought beer. One just shook my hand and said, finally. Apparently, I'd become a kind of suburban folk hero. The guy who dethroned the clipboard queen. The HOA whisperer. We spent the evening on my porch. Folding chairs, music from someone's Bluetooth speaker, and a collective exhale you could feel in your ribs. People told stories. Things Karen had done that never made it to the HOA minutes. Finding a kid for sidewalk chalk. Making someone replant their lawn because the shade of green clashed with the neighborhood palette. Demanding someone repaint their shutters because they were too emotionally aggressive. We laughed. We shared. And for the first time, the neighborhood felt like an actual community, not a gated experiment in passive aggression. Later, when everyone left and the street was quiet again, I sat with the last beer of the night, looking at the still surface of my pool. It hadn't been touched in weeks. No wet footprints. No half-empty wine glasses. No borrowed towels. Just water and quiet and peace. Exactly what I moved here for. And I thought, funny thing about people who make up their own rules. They never expect the rules to turn around and bite. They always think they're untouchable until someone pushes back hard enough to leave a mark. I took a sip, leaned back, and smiled. Suburbia was mine again. And Karen? She was just a cautionary tale, one vest, one pool, and one lawsuit too late. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.